This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. We continue in the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. We're up to Ois Nun Daled. Ois Nun Daled. Following Ois Nun Gimel, where the Rosh said not to slacken off in a mitzvah, but if it comes to your hand, you should do it l'shem shamayim, which we explained that even though the Rosh already said in Ois Mem Zayin that you should be mizares in a mitzvah, but now here he's talking about a mitzvah that does not have a particular zman. And nevertheless, there's no mitzvah of zrizim akdim in the mitzvahs, there's only the inyan of what is called shihuye mitzvah loy mashinan, still do not slacken off. So we're talking about a mitzvah that if you don't do it today, you could still do it tomorrow, nevertheless you should not delay it. So continuing in that theme, the Rosh says in Ois Nun Daled, Al tis'atzel beberchas haLevana, do not be lazy in the blessing on the Levana. Shem loizachu Yisrael ela lahakbil pnei shchina pam b'chol chodesh dayam. That if the Jewish people would not merit only to receive the countenance of the Shechina each month, that would be sufficient. So the Rosh is saying, don't be lazy in berchas haLevana. So this is another example of a mitzvah that does not have to be at a specific time. You have many days in the month to do it. In fact, the Bir Halacha Paskins in Siman Tav Chaf Vav Sif Beis that if it's a choice between doing the mitzvah sooner or waiting a night or two and doing it B'roivam Hadras Melech, the Bir Halacha says B'roivam Hadras Melech is more important. Nevertheless, so even though this is a mitzvah that is called that doesn't have to be done by a certain time, nevertheless we say shehuye mitzvah loy mashina, and you should try to do it right away. So the Rosh brings this idea that through the mitzvah of Kiddush Levana, one is zoichet yimakabel pnei hashchina. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, anyone who is mavarich the chodesh bezmanoi, it's as if they were makabel pnei shchina. Here it says hachodesh hazeh lachem. Regarding Kiddush HaChodesh, it says HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. And regarding being Mekabel Pnei Shechina, it says Zeh, Keli, V'Amveyo. By both Kiddush HaChodesh, HaChodesh Hazeh, by Kabbalah Pnei Shechina, it says Zeh. From here, Rabbi Shmuel learned that if Klal Yisrael would only receive the countenance of the Shechina once a month, that would be sufficient. Now, how is one receiving the countenance of the Shechina through Kiddush HaChodesh? Rav Goldberg cites the Rashba, Chelek Dal Tzim Mem Ches, that we are Mekabel the Pnei Hashchina through the Dimyon of the Levana, that Hashem recreates, is Mechadish every month, and the Levana never changes its course, its circuit. That indicates a certain subservience to the Pnei Hashchina, and it's like being Mekabel Pnei Hashchina. The Be'er Halacha quotes in Pri Megadim that what does it mean, lekabel? Through the Levana and the other stars, that they always watch their guard, we see the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rabbeinu Yoina in Sanhedrin explains that we're not able to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu straight up, but we can recognize him through his mighty acts. And this is a form of being Mekabel Pnei Hashchina. The Brisker Rav, in this week's Parsha, what do you know? The Grizz on this week's Parsha writes that when Klal Yisrael wanted to Mekabel Pnei Shechina, they were given 3 halachos. In this week's Parsha, Parshas Yisrael, Klal Yisrael said Ritzoynenu, Leroy says Malkeinu. So they were given 3 halachos. Number 1, to wash their clothing, like we find in Yavamas on Daf Mem Vav, that they needed to wear white begadim, Roy Lekabel Pnei Shechina. Number 2, they need to be prepared. Number 3, they need to go out from the Machane Likras, the Shechina, like you go out to greet a king. Says Rav Goldberg, comparatively, by Kiddush Levana, we find all 3 things. Number 1, one is supposed to have clean clothing, beautiful clothing for Kiddush Levana, Ayin Or Chaim Sim Tav Chavav. You can only do Kiddush Levana Begadim Naim. And regarding preparing for Kabbalas Pnei Hashchina, by Kiddush Levana also, you need to hinge your eyes upward, straighten out your feet, and be in a state of preparedness. And regarding going out to greet the Shechina, the Bach says the same thing by Kiddush Levana, that one cannot do Kiddush Levana under a roof. Sometimes people make this mistake. They're under the awning of the shul or of their house. They cannot be under a roof, just like Kabbalas Pnei Shechina requires that one go out to greet the Shechina. Now, we've mentioned a number of times that the Taisus Yom Tov wrote a Perush on the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh, a translation in Yiddish of the Orchos Chaim of the Rosh. So, translating his translation back into Hebrew, he says, don't be misrashel, don't be misatzel when it comes time for Kiddush Levana. This is a very honorable mitzvah. We always have to remember it because it's like you're being mekabel pnei Shechina. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from the time that He took us out of Mitzrayim until He destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem resided in the Mishkan and the Mikdash. So we know the Beis HaMikdash was the resting place of the Shechina. Therefore, now when we make Kiddush Levana, the inyan of Hashras HaShechina repeats itself. And therefore we have to make sure to be mezaris in it, because as the Gemara says, so this implies that through that the Hashras HaShechina that one is zoicha to, through the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, is similar to what was in the Mishkan. Now it's interesting. The Gemara in Sanhedrin learns out that there is Hashras HaShechina by Kiddush Levana from a Hekesh. It says by Kiddush Levana HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, and it says by Hashras HaShechina Zeh Keli V'Anveyu. Just like by Zeh Keli V'Anveyu there's a Hashras HaShechina, so too HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem there's a Hashras HaShechina. Now, says Rav Goldberg something amazing. The Hashras HaShechina by Zeh Keli V'Anveyu, what was that referring to? Zeh Keli V'Anveyu, the Targum says, Va'avnei le Beis Makdasha. The Hashras HaShechina by Zeh Keli V'Anveyu was the pledge to build the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, the Hashras HaShechina through Kiddush Levana is analogous to the Hashras HaShechina that comes about through the Mikdash and the Mishkan. Okay, my Rabbi said we're going to hold it over here. Bez Hashem, we'll see everybody tomorrow, same time. Okay, Kol Tov. Bye-bye.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.